Hey everyone! I know that several of you would really like to see the next installment in the series of the little Unimog 421, and so would I. And I have begun filming that video quite a while ago actually. But part of what I wanted to do next on this thing was to finish up the hydraulic system. And on top of that, I have a few other projects where I want to do some hydraulic work, and in general, I've just been getting more and more machines with hydraulic systems. So I have been thinking that it would be really nice if I was able to put together hydraulic hoses here at home. That would hopefully save me a lot of time and money and also make the installations a little bit better. But for me to be able to do that, I needed a specific tool, and I finally got it. But it has taken a really long time to get this thing. This had to be shipped from Asia, and the shipping just turned to absolute chaos. Because this is a fairly heavy little box, this had to be shipped with ground freight, and that in itself is pretty slow, but it had several issues on the way and nearly got lost, and it actually made it all the way here to Denmark, but then it was rejected by the first courier and sent back, and halfway back that was fixed, so it was sent back towards me, but ended up in the Netherlands, and it's just been all over the place. This little box has traveled more of the world than most people get to do in their life, but it's finally here. I wasn't actually planning to do a dedicated video on this tool, but I got to thinking that some of you might actually want to know about this thing or might just find it interesting, so here we are. Now, I've most likely put a picture of it up in the thumbnail, so you probably already know what this is about, but I haven't seen it yet, so let's get it out of this box. I actually do appreciate that the Chinese usually make these nice little shipping crates for their stuff. And I should just say that nothing in this video is sponsored. I did buy this thing with my own money, so I'm not advertising anything here. And I specifically bought this because, personally, I was just really curious to see whether or not it was worth it. I'm not going to be able to pick it up like that. There we go. Comes with an extra set of seals for the hydraulic cylinder. Interesting. And a manual. And here we have the machine itself. But it's missing one of its feet. Well, no, it's actually not missing. It's down here in the box, but it's completely mangled. And this little screw that was supposed to hold it is completely bent. I don't know if that happened during shipping. Huh. Interesting. But then again, this thing has been shipped around quite a lot. But that's an easy fix. We'll just put a new bolt in there. No big deal. Oh, it's actually not the bolt that's bent. It's the whole threaded part. Interesting. Let's just see if we can somewhat bend that back into place. Yeah, that should be good enough. And we'll just put a new bolt in there and use that as the foot. There we go. We barely got it out of the box before we had to fix it. That's very promising. So this here is a hydraulic hose crimper, and it's a pretty big tool that really only does one thing, which is to press these kinds of collars that are holding the fittings on the ends of hydraulic hoses. Now, this seems like quite a lot just to do that one thing, but it's really the only good and viable way of attaching these fittings. Because hydraulic hoses are operating at extremely high pressures, you need an extremely good and tight fit of the ends. Now, there are several different versions of these tools, but they all do pretty much the same thing, where you have a set of jaws that you can put your hydraulic hose in between, and it will press down on the fitting with great force to a specific measurement. Now, this particular one, it looks like a rough copy of something like a FinPower or an OMP, and those were also the brands that I was looking into when I was looking for one of these machines. But as I was searching around for that, these started popping up from places like eBay, And as I started looking into these, it got a little bit weird because there were many different listings from many different vendors, but all of them using pretty much the exact same pictures, so I can only assume that they were selling mostly the same machine. However, the prices varied greatly, all the way down from a few $100s to several $1,000s. Now, I just went ahead and got the cheapest one I could find. And for this machine, with the very long shipping and tolls and taxes and all that, I have paid just around 4,000 Danish kroner. Now, that is several times cheaper than the name brands, but I know what kind of limitations that comes with, especially with Chinese quality. But really, I was mostly just curious to see if something like this would be a viable option for someone like me who is not trying to run a hydraulic shop, but will only be using this at my home shop once or twice a year at most. So with all that out of the way, let's have a closer look at what I actually got here. Now, as we already saw, it did come with an extra set of seals, and at first that would be a good thing, but it also makes you think if that's because the seals won't last very long. We have a manual, and it's always a good idea to look through the manual of these Chinese machines. Not because you necessarily need the information, but usually the translations are fantastic. Nose. And in this little drawer, we do have a full set of dies. These are for mounting inside of these jaws, so you can adjust this thing for several different sizes of hose. All right. Very cool. Now, this doesn't have any type of quick change die sets. Normally the name brands would have some kind of quick attach, so you just swap the whole set right away. But these you all have to slide them in individually. We have a very simple hand pump with a lock on it. That's kind of nice. And let's just see. It already has oil in it. Interesting. We have a pressure relief for the pump. Wow, that is some very flimsy plastic. And it's running through a simple pressure gauge into this donut-shaped hydraulic cylinder. And this big cylinder really is the main piece of this tool, and it's quite an unusual cylinder at that. It is, of course, hollowed out so we can get a hose through it. So the hydraulic piston itself is inside of this ring chamber, and it is pushing outwards towards this side. And the back side of the piston, that is this part that is sticking out right here. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but this inside of it, that is tapered. So as it is pushing outwards, it is pushing this taper in against all of our dies or jaws in here, forcing them together. And finally, we have a little micrometer on here as well. That also feels very flimsy, but we'll see if that works. This is to make the final adjustment so that you have a little indicating light that will come on when you reach a specific size. And it looks like we have a little battery compartment right here. Oh, it already has a battery in it. Okay, cool. So, yeah, little test button and the light works. Interesting. And up on top here, we do have a nice little chart so we can see which set of dies we have to use with any given size of hose, and also what to set the micrometer at. So first impression, for the price, I'm actually really happy with what I'm seeing here. The quality is about what I would expect from this kind of product, but actually this has a really nice finish to it, and it looks very well put together. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this so far. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We got to see if this can actually crimp a fitting. So in order to try this thing out, we of course need something to work with. Now, I've already bought a handful of fittings and stuff because, as I mentioned, I have a few projects in the works where I'm going to need this. But really, this is the point where it starts to become questionable whether or not it's even worth it to do this kind of work at home rather than just going off to a hydraulic shop. Because when you start getting into hydraulic fittings, you will quickly find that they've made it very easy by making hundreds of different versions, many different sizes, many different types, many different styles, and none of it is really compatible. There's inches, there's metric, there's all sorts of weird stuff. So if you want to try and keep a little bit of everything in stock, you end up spending thousands in fittings and stuff that you might actually never use. And those are just the fittings, but you're also going to be needing some hose. And luckily for me, the stuff that I'm about to build, most of it will just be this 3/8 hose. And I think the only other size I have on my machines is 1/2 inch. So I can get away with just 2 sizes. But if you're looking to build up a stock, you're going to want a good bit of all the different sizes. And just this one little roll, that was over $100. And this is the cheap stuff. That's not what they're going to be selling you at a hydraulic shop. The stuff they have is at least twice the cost. And all of this is before we even start talking about hydraulic cylinders and pumps and motors and valves and all that stuff. So playing with hydraulics and especially building up a stock of it, that just gets very expensive very quickly. So for someone like me who is going to be doing this at home, I'm going to be ordering stuff as I need it. That means I'm going to have a few days of waiting to get the parts in before I can actually build my hoses. And that really is the main advantage that you get by simply going off to a hydraulic shop, is that they can make the hose you need right there on the spot. You can get back home, put it on your machine and get going. But for someone like me who is doing these projects and little custom builds and things like that, I can afford those extra few days of waiting. But the advantage that I'm hoping for is not so much to save money, because it's really only going to be a little bit. I have to make quite a few hoses before I can even offset the cost of this machine. But the main advantage is when I'm doing these builds on these machines and also doing custom stuff, I don't always know exactly how I want to run the hoses and exactly which way the fittings are supposed to be pointed. Because keep in mind, if you put 90-degree fittings on the hose, you can't twist hydraulic hose, so you need those fittings to be in the right orientation. So being able to do it here means that I can set all the hoses up and play around with it and figure out exactly where I want everything and just make it one hose at a time as I go along, rather than taking a bunch of rough measurements off to a hydraulics shop and hope for the best. But of course there is also going to be some cost savings when you go to a hydraulics shop. They have pretty much everything in stock, but someone has to pay for that huge stock, so you are going to have to spend a little bit of extra money for that hose you're getting made. Another thing that you typically can't do at a hydraulic shop, maybe you can, it depends on the shop, but generally they're going to want to sell you a new hose with all new fittings on it. But something that I can do now, because I'm doing this for myself at home, is take a hose like this, where I already have the correct fitting I want on one end, but the other end of the hose has nothing. This is something that was taken off a machine where this hose is fairly new. It really hasn't been on there very long, but one of the ends had been cut, and I only need about half this length. So we can trim this down and put a fitting on here, and I would have already saved half the fittings. Now generally you do want to use a new hose, because the hose is what's going to perish first. It's not so much the fittings. But as I said, this hose is not very old. There's nothing wrong with it, so I can go and reuse this and already save myself a bit of money here. So let's go ahead and use this hose as our test subject. I've already marked the length that I want, and we're going to be cutting that with the grinder because, well, there's steel in it, but also we want a nice, clean, straight cut. Now there are several different types of fittings. The ones that I have use a separate press collar. And this is the thing that we are crushing with this tool. You can see it has a bunch of ribs on the inside, so we're crushing those as well as the outer edge right here. So that's why we need all that force, because it's quite a lot of steel to try and force in on itself. So we shove this on here, and generally it's a good idea just to check that you've bottomed out and then mark the hose. That way, when you have crimped it, you can see if you line up with that mark. Otherwise, something has gone wrong, and you might not have a good fit on the end here. And then we get the rest of our fitting in place. Make sure that is completely bottomed out. There we go. So now we got to figure out which set of dies we need to put in this machine, and for that we need to know the size of the hose. And already it gets a little bit tricky, because when you get a hydraulic hose, typically it's marked in inch sizes. This one is a 3/8. But that size refers to the inside diameter of the hose, but we're not pressing on the inside, we're pressing on the outside. So we want to know the outside diameter of this in millimeters. This one is 19. So we go and look at our chart on top of the machine here, and we look for 19. We can see there's actually two 19s. There's here and here. That means we can use two different sets of dies. We just need a different setting on our micrometer. So we could use die set 16 and then set our micrometer at 3. Or we could use die set 19 and set the micrometer at 0. So I think we're going to be using die set 19. And the way to read this is if we use die set 19 and we set our micrometer at 0, the final diameter is going to be 19 millimeters, but that was the size of our hose, and that's actually a little bit too tight. And this is all going to depend on the type of fitting you're using. Like the one that's on the other end of this, that looks like it is crimped all the way down to the size of the hose, but this is also a different type of fitting. Unfortunately, I don't actually know what the correct final diameter of these is, so I'm just going to have to go off the wall thickness and just add that to our measurement. It's just about a millimeter, a little bit more. So let's just add 2 millimeters. It's going to be a nice tight fit. So we want our final diameter to be 21. So to do that with die set 19, 21, we have to set the micrometer at +2 millimeters. All right, so this part gets a little bit weird because they did write the numbers on the bags here with Sharpie, so you can barely see it says 19 on this bag. But if we take out one of these dies, we can see on the back of it, they've stamped the number 5 on this set. And that seems to be the case all throughout, that these are just marked with the numbers 1 through 8, but that doesn't correspond to the numbers that they used on this label up here. I'll probably end up taking these out of the bags, and also the numbers on the bags are already wearing off. So I think what I'm going to do is write the corresponding number in here. So I'll write 19 in this box for this set. And also up here, I might go with a Sharpie and just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on down there, just to make it a little bit easier for myself next time. But let's go ahead and get these things in here. And I'm going to put them with the numbers facing out. Doesn't say anywhere you're supposed to do that. Oh, that's a bit of a tight fit. Interesting. It's tight there as well. We might actually have to file down some of the rough edges of these things. Let's see how many of these we can get in. I also noticed the stamped number on that one looks different from that one, so these weren't all made in the same batch. Yeah, that's tight as well. Okay, so we have 3 of them where I'm just going to polish up these edges a bit, try and make them fit a little bit easier. I can feel they do have a few little burrs and rough spots on them. There we go. Right, so now I got all but one in there, but I can't even get this one started. But I just swapped this with one of the others, so it's not the die, it's this jaw in here, and it actually has a tiny bit of deformation right in that corner. Seems like something knocked it right on this very corner, and it's been punched outwards a bit, so I'm gonna have to file that a bit as well. It's a weird angle to try and file at. That's all it took. Nice. So now we should be all set up with the right size. Let's see if I can even get this entire thing through here. I can. And I'm just going to want to line it up so that this end of the press collar in here is right at the outer edge of these dies. And the final step is just to set our micrometer at 2 millimeters. I'm just going to hold the hose in place until the jaw's in there, get a good grip on it. Here we go. Also keeping an eye on my pressure gauge down here. just to make sure it doesn't get to anything extreme. I'm at maximum pressure now, and this light did not come on. I didn't get it on camera. It's slowly coming back down, but it was all the way up here at 40 bars. Normally, you wouldn't go much above 30, but I wanted to see if that light came on, and it didn't. So I don't think we should count on that light. But let's get this out, see how it looks. Oh, it's crimped all right. It is very crimped. Yeah, it's actually been crushing the inside of this fitting as well, so that was definitely too much. We're gonna have to redo this. Now, there's a reason I was testing it out with this hose, because the size on this is not very critical. I can afford it being a little bit shorter. I just want to try something here. Let's just try and close this all the way down with nothing in it. Now I still have this micrometer set to 2, so in theory we should get a light when we reach a diameter of 21 millimeters. Let's give this a try. Oh, that's it. We are bottomed out. The jaws are now all touching each other, and we still didn't get a light. Unfortunately, I don't have any good way to measure these jaws in here, but we'll just give it a rough measurement. That is right at 19, so this is exactly the size it's supposed to be when it's all clamped together. But yeah, this light should definitely come on. I wonder if I can turn it in. Oh, we do get a light at 3.2, that's where it turns on the light. So actually that should have been just over 22 millimeters in here. Right, so we're very far off. But if 3.2, if that is what should have been 0, let's just try something else. Let's just try and open this back up. Wow, it just came on again, interesting. So we'll open this back up, and then we will pretend that that's 0, and we will turn it in, let's say another 2. So that would be 5.2. So in theory, that should bring us to the 21 millimeter. Oh, we did get a light. And we're not quite touching. And it's 20, so still too tight. All right, this micrometer is no good. And now it just shut off because I touched it. Right. I was thinking if you could perhaps just adjust this, because it does have a little set screw in it. But even if we moved the 0 point of it and just went from that, it still wasn't accurate. So I think the most accurate way to press with this thing is just going off the pressure. All right, I got everything set back up. This time we're going to take it a little bit more easy. And also this time I am going to stick to the limit of those 30 bars of pressure. So let's give it a go. Now we're reaching just about that 30 bar mark. It does come down again a little bit, but still no light in this, even though we turned it down. Let's get it out and have a look. Oh yeah, that's looking much more correct. I'm liking that a lot better. And this time the inside looked just fine as well. So it looks like we really can't count on that little micrometer and light. I should probably just go off the maximum pressure. That seems to be a little bit more reliable. Give you guys a little close-up as well, so you can see the finished crimping. It's not the prettiest I've ever seen, but it'll do just fine. This was the fitting that was crimped too hard. Look at how tiny the hole in there became. But hey, at least we know it's capable of putting down some power. So other than that unreliable micrometer and the few little fixes we had to do, this machine actually seems to be pretty good for what I need. So I guess my final thoughts are, the quality is about what I expected of one of these Chinese machines. But then again, it did cost like 4 or 5 times less than one of the name brand machines. Now, this is definitely not something I would buy to start a hydraulic workshop business. But for someone like me who is just going to be making a few hoses every now and then and using it to fix up my own machines, I actually think this is really going to come in handy. And in the long run, it might also save me a few bucks. But again, I do have to make a good handful of hoses before I even offset the price of the machine. But then again, that would have been a whole lot more if I actually bought one of the name brand machines. So all in all, despite its flaws, I am pretty happy with this thing, and now I can finally get back to some of my projects. Now, I wasn't really planning on a tool review, but that's what you got, so let me know if you found this interesting. Thank you guys for watching along, and I'll see you in the next one.